Welcome to Highly Detailed News. We have with us today Emily Plizak. She has been working in the cannabis industry for the last few years. Currently, she works for Kiva Confections, the #1 edibles company here in California. Before that, she was with Green Bee Life, a cannabis digital network company that worked to educate the canna curious. How are you doing today, Emily?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on. We really, really wish that we could have done this in person, but hopefully,
I mean,
hopefully we'll
the
be right back out.
circumstances as it is, it's okay. It's cool that I'm a part of it, whether it's in real life or virtual. So I appreciate it.
No, absolutely. Thank you. Real quick, can you just go over what led you to cannabis and how you kind of joined this crazy industry?
So I actually started taking cannabis medically. When I first moved out here about 7 years ago, I was working in commercial production, and I wound up taking cannabis more medically for all of the aches and pains that I would get from my Lyme disease. I was diagnosed with Lyme disease when I was around 7 years old. So I've had different neurological and like muscular pain and discomfort for a good amount of my years growing up. And I just saw how compassionate the people were in the industry and how they were all just trying to really help people find, a way to feel better, a way to feel happier. And working in commercial production, the hustle and bustle of the life just kind of wore me down. And in between shows, and commercials, I was actually bud tending. So I learned a lot about the plant to also educate other people.
Right.
And just realize that this was more of the industry for me, a little bit more rewarding.
No, absolutely. I mean, currently production looks like it's going to be shut down even longer than a lot of those things. So
Mhm.
it is odd that cannabis has been deemed the essential business now, when places also has it illegal, and we're still fighting a lot of those pros and cons on several state levels. How do you think we're going to move forward with everything just being so slowed down currently?
I mean, to be honest, as much as it's slowed down in the world, I think in the world of cannabis, it's sped up. I don't know about other companies, but with Kiva sales, our sales, especially with delivery, have like been skyrocketing. I mean, even before quarantine, we had pretty good amount of people stocking up on edibles
Right.
just to keep themselves throughout the quarantine. It seems like people need this medicine to keep themselves a little bit more sane, and honestly just to keep them a little bit more level-headed with everything going
No,
on.
definitely.
But it's going to be an interesting reopen when we do.
Absolutely. Um, are you seeing that people are leaning more towards edibles over smokable choices because of all of the respiratory illnesses that are tied to the current situation?
It's funny. I do. I think that honestly, a lot of people are trying to be a little bit more conscientious about how they're consuming cannabis. I've had a couple of friends reach out to me just asking me what edibles would I recommend to them, or tinctures even, because they're not trying to smoke as often as they used to. So they're trying to supplement it with a little bit more, you know, uh, homeopathic ways. I mean, cannabis is homeopathic at the end of the day, but the smoke itself can still do a little bit of damage to your body anyway.
Yeah, still burning carbon at the end of the day. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
no, I think that's another thing you talk about. People, now that they're stuck inside more often, will probably smoke a little bit more than they were before. So, a lot of those things I could definitely see trying to get away from smokable choices a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they're going to consume it one way. So, if they think maybe having an edible or a tincture is going to help their lungs in the current situation, I mean, kudos to them.
Definitely, right? Uh, Edibles can be delicious, so I'm not I'm not knocking that choice at all. So, um, have have you seen any major shifts in how product is going to be handled, or are we going to see major safety changes? The way packaging is going to have to go through, are those changes coming for the industry?
So I know with Kiva personally, like we've already had like months prior to the quarantine, we've actually talked about how all of us as brand ambassadors, when we're handling certain samples and things that people are going to consume, we have to be really we careful about that and certified as like a food safety handler. So we've already kind of been moving in that direction to be a little bit more well-rounded and safe in that, because we are, an edible company. We should be working to the same, um, I guess like levels as other food and drink companies, which we are as Kiva. Yeah.
Yeah. I Food and drink is going to be one of those difficult processes as we move forward, because how are you going to get someone to come in and then remove their mask, which is a potential contamination at that point anyway, to do those things? Are we going to see something more along the lines of requested samples, mail-in type things that are obviously non-medicated under California laws?
Yeah.
But is there going to be a shift into some of those things of trying to reach out and educate safely and then kind of get the ones that are actually interested?
So I think right now we're not going to have too much of a presence in actual storefronts. And I think that's actually both on the retailer and the brand's discretion. I mean, honestly, when it comes to retailers, they don't want too many people in their storefront. When it comes to brands, if there's people not coming into the storefront and it's only curbside or delivery anyway, what's the point of our presence? So
Absolutely.
right now we're figuring out a way of how to do things more digitally, virtually. When we see consumers purchasing our product, we're going to start giving them a little like swag bag, or maybe we'll throw in a prepackaged sample of a new flavor coming up or something.
Cool.
We haven't gotten quite to like what we're going to be doing. Honestly, with the way things have gone, just manufacturing and the production side has been such a big concentration just to keep our workers safe.
Right. No, that's a very, very important thing. At the end of the day, we have to take care of each other. So all of this is great. It's enjoyable. But if we're doing it unsafely, there's no reason to be doing it at all. So,
what's the point?
Yeah, exactly. So with quarantine keeping us locked up, have you found yourself going to any non-cannabis specific items that are keeping you sane during the sesh?
Yeah,
Okay,
actually.
let's hear about it.
So, okay, I've always loved yoga, but my girlfriend who is a yogi, she's been doing virtual classes. So I've been taking advantage of those. To be honest, I am not the most like flexible, physical activity forward person. So adding that into my life and going on runs and more walks has just been so amazing. I never thought like just walking around the same neighborhood and seeing the same streets all the time would actually like be so, I don't know, invigorating.
No, it's the dog is excited to go out and go around the neighborhood as much as possible. So I totally get it. It's one of those things.
Yeah. And then I've been journaling. Just trying to be a little bit more on the self-exploration and writing down what I'm grateful for and just having a little bit more of a more positive mindset. Because at the end of the day, cannabis can only do so much. It's really what you're going to do for your brain too. You got to work it out.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Anything is only going to add to your current situation. There's not a lot that just completely wipes anything out. So it's always better to have, right? One of the things that we deal with on this show is just trying to bring education and a little bit less of a stereotype about the misconceptions that are so frequently leveled against people. What is your least favorite stereotype you are still hit with as a cannabis consumer?
Oh my gosh. Well, the one that I get from my mom a lot is, you smoked that much today? And it's like, and it would be like, I had a bowl or two, and like everybody has their own amount, or, it's like, oh, you ate cannabis? Like, from people who don't know. I mean, that's the biggest stereotype, is like, a lot of people don't understand that there's so many different products that have cannabis in their bath bombs, creams, oils. It's not just smoking anymore. So I get a lot of those like weird questions when people don't recognize a cannabis product that I might have shared on like my platform or my social or something.
Right. Yeah, that is the one thing too. The industry is moving so quickly that products are changing so fast, even just between dosing or concentration levels or just actual products in them.
Yeah, I know. And I'm sure you've seen like, the rise and the decline of terpenes and cannabis terpenes and non-cannabis terpenes. And it's just, that just is so confusing in its own self to try to explain to non-cannabis users what a terpene is and why they're so important, that I think the emphasis of it can be lost there sometimes.
No, definitely. It's definitely have a lot of room for more education. And what people need to understand is the hardest thing to explain is that while it is still the singular plant cannabis, there are so many varying effects that are derived out of the chemical profiles that this plant produces. And so even the classic misnomer of sativa versus indica, while the industry is trying to push away from that and saying everything is a hybrid, we do kind of need some way of distinguishing a light versus a dark, or we need to come up with some nomenclature to help customers identify what they're after.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's so many different cannabinoids with the combination of terpenes that can give you various effects. It's not just, let me just get high, dude. It's not all about that anymore.
No. And interestingly enough, I still think there is plenty of room for that, but we've seen the concentrates and the waxes and the oil market move aggressively in that spectrum. And so there is still, I don't know, I guess like your bachelor party equivalent of getting too high for those regular consumer now.
Yeah.
But that's on a level of intensity that we're just not dealing with as your typical consumer.
Absolutely. I mean, I like a good joint from time to time. Sometimes I like it infused with a little bit of oil or kief, and that would be like when I'm, smoking recreationally. Like if I want to have a couple of shots of tequila that night, it would be that equivalent in a joint. But I don't dab on a regular basis. I don't take a lot of oil or concentrates. Those are like, the blue moons when I want to have a really good time.
No, definitely. It's the nice change. All the shops being legal now, I don't have to go in and say yes to the dab to prove I'm not a cop anymore. So that's always fun.
Yeah.
So, a little different.
Those, oh God, I can't even imagine those shops that had the little dab offices off to the side. Them running today, the coronavirus is just.
Oh, I couldn't imagine that. Yeah. I don't know how long ago you were able to do it, but there used to be several years back a hash bar above Venice Boardwalk where you could go and they would give you dabs above the boardwalk.
Wow.
And so that was a nice tourist attraction, but it's been gone for several years now.
Yeah, no, I just remember I used to live in Hollywood. I'm now up in the valley in Sherman Oaks. And honestly, it's hilarious when I drive past my old dispensary, which isn't there anymore. But I remember the small room off to the side that on Sundays, if you spent over a certain amount, they'd give you a free little dab and you could go over there and do it yourself. But man, it was always packed.
Right. And that's the thing. I mean, what do they say? Candy is sweet, but liquor is quicker. So I guess there is method to the madness for sure. But yeah, it's definitely not your day-to-day typically for those being productive. There are people who have access to incredible supply. And I have seen people who do what we would call sativa dabs. And they're really trying to get their things. I've seen people do CBD dabs now as well. And they're just trying to get a high level of, anti-impairment, but still anti-anxiety, something in there that's not going to mess them up so they can go to this meeting. But people have needs. And I understand that we're treating them holistically and maybe a little bit subjectively. But at the end of the day, we've also recognized that alcohol is one of those things that people are using medicinally subjectively. So I think there's definitely room to learn and grow, hopefully.
Oh, we're just scratching the surface at what this plant can do. We're hyping up THC and CBD, but what about all of the other cannabinoids, THCV, THCA, like CBGGA, just like the whole alphabet. We're
Absolutely.
all like,
and we've identified thousands of them, but we're really trying to scapegoat DUI checkpoints on one cannabinoid. THC does seem to be one of the more impairing ones, but if you're looking at it from a grower standpoint, as an extraction standpoint, that's just typically a good indicator that the other cannabinoids are there.
Yep.
And so it's kind of unfortunately this end all be all answer that may be a little misleading.
Yeah.
And so, well, I don't know. Again, we're talking about lab results. Then, so how do we get to make sure the labs are all using unified results, are all making sure they do everything published? So we do have a lot of progress that needs to be made in lots of those directions.
Exactly. There's just so many layers to the industry, like, companies like Kiva or any flower company or, just any brand can be doing everything right. But when it comes down to what other components are they legal? Do they have all of their paperwork done? Are they paying? Are they, I don't know, getting testing? Where are they getting testing done? Are they paying their test labs to maybe lie on something? You don't know. It's still a little bit fishy and murky waters that we're, working in the legal industry. But I'm excited to kind of see where it goes. I just hope that they keep the medical community alive a little bit more. When it was passed, they capped us all at 100 milligrams for edibles. And don't get me wrong, I don't need more than 100 milligrams a day. Like, I don't, but there are some people who do have medical ailments that might need access to that.
Definitely. Talking anti-inflammatory medications, things like that alone, edibles are a great replacement for a lot of those people who can't smoke, can't do that. They unfortunately do typically develop a higher tolerance eating edibles more consistently. There does seem to be some level of science that your fat tolerance builds up a little bit more with edibles over smoking. Mm-hmm. But again, we don't know. These are very subjective, self-reported studies that hopefully we can kind of honestly move forward and get some of these things done now that we recognize that cannabis is essential. It is providing comfort and relief to millions of people right now in one of the craziest times we've ever seen again. And now we're going to have to move forward. And so we either come to terms and make this safe, accessible, or we don't.
I think that although the pandemic came in such a weird time in the industry, I think it came at a perfect time for the other states that have been pushing for it. And I think that that's going to open up doors and possibilities and opportunities for those states.
Yeah, I would definitely hope so. Just from a production standpoint alone, hemp has seemed to kind of boost a lot of these rural economies. And granted, the CBD oil market has become just a rampant snake oil market because of that. Mm-hmm. But we are seeing some fiber production. We are seeing some industrial production as well that's coming from that. So hopefully we keep making strides and actually balance this a little bit better. But it's going to take effort.
Absolutely. I mean, it's going to take a village, and we're all just going to have to work it out for the next couple of years, regardless of what industry we're in, because we're all getting hit right now.
No, it's everybody. And unfortunately, I feel the ramifications are only going to grow from this. And so we're going to have to keep our eyes out and make sure that as we move forward, we aren't taken advantage of as an industry. If we allow, like, a Miller Coors lock that was similar in the beer industry, we could be seeing deadlock on this industry for 40, 50 years as the money becomes more and more entrenched. So hopefully we see some of the patient-sided products keep being brought forth, and there does seem to be a big enough movement to embrace the medical side and a lot of those products still, that I think it is still here to stay, but I'm usually optimistic. So
I am too. So I'm just like hoping for the best. And I know as a company with Kiva, we're doing our best to just make sure that like we stay afloat and we can still keep making, delicious edibles that people seem to love, especially during this time.
No, definitely. Kiva's been around a long time. I started out in edibles a long time ago myself, and they were one of the best companies for the whole time. So I'm sure that they will at least be very, very good for the near future, unless they change up. So I'm hoping so. Yeah. That's the one thing I was going to say as well. One of my favorite things to do is actually to make s'mores with edible chocolate. So I highly recommend that Kiva chocolate for that 100%. It is. Oh, yeah. One of the best camping treats you can absolutely have. So
I love doing that, and I actually like putting a little piece of chocolate in my coffee too in the morning. So just like one little piece, a little bit of 5 milligrams in your coffee, so you've got the little pep and then you've got the calm.
Yeah, no, definitely. I could see that bit working out well. Your espresso chocolate does that well for me, so I 100% get it.
Oh yeah, the espresso beans. I've had a couple people call them magic beans, so I'm thinking that we need to start like putting that on the side of the tin.
I wonder what are the limitations in calling things magic anymore. So I would say maybe, branding is probably the funnest issue here. I see a lot of people claiming to do outrageous things, it's like the term organic that keeps getting thrown around, even though I'm fairly certain the FDA board has never gone around to make that note on anyone.
No,
So
I don't understand. It's crazy when people think natural is better for them too. I mean, marketing does a
yeah,
really good job at manipulating your your brain to think that something is good for you when in the end they're just trying to make sales.
yeah, no. And I mean, I guess at the end of the day, if we don't know it exists and we don't think it's good for us, we probably won't buy it. But
Hmm.
there's a lot to be said. So gone are
Yeah,
the days when you could actually try the edibles in the store and see how they affected you. And medical was nice for seeing your favorite Kiva rep there with a piece of chocolate. So
I know, I know. I honestly I miss being in those shops. I mean, I miss just like chatting with people and educating people and just sharing experiences with them.
yeah,
Regardless of whether I had candy or not, it seemed like I don't know. I was always just there to have a good time. That's
right.
I'm just, yeah.
No, it's there's a lot of good times we had. The market is definitely going more rigid. So we'll see. I'm sure we'll get some fun things once we're allowed back out into public again. But
Oh, for sure.
yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much again for joining us, Emily. I had an amazing time.
Thank you so much for having me. Seriously, like I would love to do this again. Hopefully in real life we'll be able to.
Yes, that's what I say. Hopefully we can get something done in person, and we'll smoke a joint or have some s'mores or something. So
Yeah, definitely. I'll bring the chocolate.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Kyle.
Be sure to check out our Patreon for extended interviews and exclusive content, and thank you again for watching Highly Detailed News.